Some Ostriches chat green issues, whatever else they feel like bringing up as they go along. Enjoy.
Well, Mr. John, welcome to the show, and tell me, what's on today's show?
Well, Hannes, in this week's episode, we bring you the second part of my conversation with Richard Muirhead about strange and very weird birds.
I really like the old credits.
It was better in the 70s, wasn't it, Ken? Barry, it was better in the 70s. The singers were better in the 70s, weren't they? They were. You had Leapy Lee and Kiki D.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jonathan Downs. I'm the director of an organisation called the Centre for Fortean Zoology, which is the English-speaking world's largest, and we like to think the best, mystery animal research group. And welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who don't know, On the Track is a show which comes out twice a week, on Saturday afternoons for about half an hour, and as On the Track Extra for about half that on Wednesday evenings. And we also, on the last Wednesday of the month, have something called, guess, wait for it, the last Wednesday of the month show, in which me and the lovely Vivian Powell try to keep some semblance of order when our regular panel, Lee McCrinnan, Dave Scott and Ian Scribs, and specially invited guests debate, discuss and generally make fun of things that have happened in the Fortean zoological world over the last month. What's this show about? Well, this episode is the second part of my conversation with my old friend Richard Muirhead about mystery birds, or rather mysterious birds, birds with a definite Fortean aspect to them. And I thought here, Bubba, if you hear something rattling, it's the dog trying to jump up on my knee, but I can't have him up on my knee. He's trying to get biscuits, but there aren't any biscuits. He ate them all. After he lost where I was now. Yes, Richard Muirhead. I've known Richard since he was 6 and I was 11. As regular viewers will know, I've got a badly wounded foot at the moment, which has caused me a lot of pain, anguish, and at one point it was looking quite likely that I would end up having my leg amputated. I've been having bad legs all my life, and when I was 11 I had the first 2 of 3 operations on my knees to correct knock knees. And when I was a boy, these days, I mean, they would probably be able to do it with keyhole surgery with a laser and you'd be in and out the same afternoon. When I was a boy and I had it done, I ended up having to have my knee ripped open and 3 or 4 large metal staples hammered into my kneecap and then taken out a year or so later. It was quite a horrific experience, and it's something which still stays with me today. However, we were in Hong Kong at the time. My father was fairly high-ranking in the Hong Kong government, and I don't know what palms he had to grease or what wheels he had to turn But every weekend, an ambulance, from memory it was a military ambulance, which actually opens up a whole other can of worms, but that's another story, would take me from the hospital and take me back to my home at Peak Mansions, where I would spend the weekend still in bed, but in the bosom of my family. And I remember on one of these occasions, my father pushed my bed, because it was a hospital bed on wheels, through the apartment and out through the, what are they called, French windows, onto the grass slope that lay outside our front floor apartment, ground floor apartment. And I sat up in bed looking at the butterflies that were flying around the grass. They were, in fact, Lampetes boeticus, the long-tailed blue, which is quite interesting because although this is a common butterfly found all over the world, one place where it is very rarely found is Britain, and when it does migrate here accidentally, it's a very rare beast indeed. My mother was a member of an organisation, a venerable organisation I'm glad to see still exists, called the LRC, the Ladies Recreation Club. And one weekend she had a visitor, one of the people with whom she went to play tennis with. And she brought her little boy with her. Now, I was an 11-year-old, and even in the hospital bed, 6-year-olds were beneath my contempt because they were little boys and I was a big boy and I couldn't bring myself ever to play with somebody else. As I used to play with my brother, who was not that age, was not much older, but that's another story because that was family obligation. But this little boy wandered out and saw me in bed looking out over the grass bank beneath me and said, "What are you doing here? Why are you in bed?" And I tried to explain to him that I'd had an operation, I couldn't walk. And he said, "Why?" So I tried to explain a bit more. And then I said, because of the rules of hospitality had been beaten into me as a young man, "What's your name?" "My name's Jonathan." And he said, "My name's Richard." And I said, "Oh, my little brother's called Richard." He said, "I'm younger than him. He's inside." And I suddenly had an idea. I wanted to try and find out what these butterflies actually were, to see if they were Lampetes boeticus or if they were something else. So I sent young Richard Muirhead, as it turned out to be, in through the house to my bedroom, where he brought my butterfly net and a copy of a book called Butterflies of Hong Kong, which my mother had given me for my very recent 11th birthday, which had actually taken place the day before I went into hospital. And so Richard spent a happy afternoon pretending to be a train, running up and down, catching the butterflies for me. As he brought them back, I would identify them with the book, and they were all Lampetes boeticus, despite my hopes that some of them would be something else. And then we'd let them go again. And Richard and I have been friends ever since, and so it's a great pleasure to have him on today's show. But what's the show broadly about? Well, it's a mixture, a melange, a muddle, I can't think of anything else beginning with M. Lauren, what begins with M?
Monkey, of course.
Thanks, honey pie. Yeah, I can work with that. We are a monkey of a show because there's something extraordinarily simian about quite a lot of the team who put this together. I have been described as looking like a wild man of the woods, and V. McQuillan likes sitting up in a tree eating bananas. So, really, you can't go any fairer than that. But what does the show do? Well, it's got hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality? Well, I suppose you should really go and ask Linda.
I know what it is, and I'm not going to tell you because it would be beneath me.
I really shouldn't have let that cat anywhere near my late wife's feminist books.
Now, jumping back to China, according to the Daily Advertiser in Singapore, on May the 18th, 1893, a bird with a human head was found in Guangdong. A bird with a human head was found in Guangdong province, China. It was 3 feet high, and its body was covered in hair several inches long. Now, I don't know of any bird with a human head, but an ostrich, if you think of an ostrich, it has a very vaguely human head, human-looking head, a flattened head.
Well, there was an ostrich in the Gobi Desert. Many.
Oh, yeah.
Let me have a look.
Yeah.
Mongolian ostrich, I think it was called. And
Yeah.
I know it's extinct, but I don't know when it became extinct. I'm trying to find. I like the idea. I like the way that when you have two people having a conversation like you and me,
Yeah.
we can actually look things up while we're. Okay, there were ostriches present across Asia as far east as China and Mongolia during the late Pleistocene and possibly into the Holocene.
Okay. Is the Holocene the most recent era?
Yes. That was as recent as 5,500 years ago.
Okay. Is it possible that a few of them hung on into the 19th century in southern China?
Oh, that's interesting. According to this, we're in the. Okay, I think it's unlikely that they survived in South China until that time, but I think there was a possibility that they survived in the Gobi Desert and someone caught one and brought it south as a curiosity.
Yeah.
That's really
cool. Well of them. Sorry?
That's really cool. It goes along with. I've got another ostrich story for you from 1968, when a dying one was found in Jordan, and all the Asian ostriches, apart from the Arabian ostrich, were wiped out. And the Arabian ostrich was wiped out in historical times. But you find this last one turned up out of the blue in 1968, dying.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by that one.
Where did you read about that one?
Oh, where did I read about that one? Oh, I don't know. I think it might have been in Holland.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but some of the last sightings include an individual east of the Tali al-Wasatin at the Jordanian-Iraqi border in 1928, a bird shot and eaten by pipeline workers in the area of Jubal in the early 1940s, two apocryphal records of birds suffering the same fate in 1948, and a dying individual found at the upper Wadi al-Hassa north of Petra in Jordan in 1968. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for something else that would, if this was a print magazine, and you have to remember I've spent most of my professional life as a print magazine contributor, journalist and editor, would be called a sidebar. So now for another sidebar. This is from a magazine called The Saudi Aramco World, and this is from pages 10 and 11 of the March-April 1982 print edition. In early Islamic times there was a lively trade in live ostriches. The Arabs, for example, sent them to China from Aden and Hormuz, and Tang sources record that the camel bird who inhabits Arabia is 4 feet and more in height, its feet resembling those of a camel. Its neck is very strong, and men are able to ride on its back. The birds thus walk for 5 or 6 miles. Its eggs have the capacity of 2 pints. And it goes on to once again describe what happened when the 1966 specimen turned up. So there were, well into living memory, sightings of Arabian and Asian ostriches. Whether they still exist today is open for debate, and I don't think we'll know the answer until another one, hopefully this time not dead or dying, turns up. But we have shown here that there was a trade in live ostriches between Saudi Arabia and China. And so I think Richard's hypothesis that the bird with the human head, which initially sounds completely laughable, is, as he said, an ostrich. Well done, Richard.
It's interesting when you get stories of birds hanging on, like the passenger pigeon.
Yes.
And the ivory-billed woodpecker.
Now, I've got a real problem with that. I know that I know there were claims that an ivory-billed woodpecker was filmed back in 2005.
Yeah.
But there've been no signs of it there before or since. And I wonder whether this was a hoax, but a hoax done for the best possible reasons to try and to make it that legislation would stop logging companies moving into that particular swamp.
Right. Okay.
That's what I think personally. I think somebody pulled a fast one on the American government. And may I say, boys and girls, I'm always in favour of anybody who pulls fast ones on governments, American, British, or anywhere else. So what's your next one?
My next one is very recent. It's from the BBC website, May the 20th this year. So 4 or 5 days ago. In Witney, in Oxfordshire, a great tit was found nesting in a smoking shelter, and it had 12 eggs, 10 of which have already hatched. So the interesting thing is, what was it doing in such an unpleasant environment as a smoking shelter? And the theory is the nicotine in the cigarettes was decreasing its load of parasites.
Oh,
I'm always interested in birds' nests in unusual places,
oh yes, me too.
such as this very recent case in Whitney in Oxfordshire of a great tit's nest.
And a smoking shelter, presumably being one of those shelters out in the pub garden or something where people are allowed to go and smoke cigarettes.
Yeah. I think this one was outside a pub or a restaurant.
Well, I used to smoke, as you know. I only gave up about 8 years ago. And
Yeah.
it's absolutely revolting habit. But if it can cure great tits of parasites, then at least smokers are doing some good in the world. Oh, that's
Yeah. That's on my Mystery Bird Facebook page.
where do you
Now,
get all these stories?
I don't really know. They just turn up. The last one is from this classic Fortean book I bought today in Oxfam.
I've not seen that before.
It's not a new book. It's published in the 80s. And it's a scrapbook of an Edwardian eccentric. And there's a story in it. I'm just going to have to try and find it again. I can try and find it. About cherkeys. Now, a cherkey, I'll read the short account from 1937. Cherkeys bred from a cock turkey and a chicken are being bred by Mrs. Cuckoo of Southfleet, Kent. A cherkey has the body and legs of a chicken and the head and neck of a turkey. Its egg is larger than a chicken's egg and tastes better.
Good God.
I've never heard of a cherkey in recent days,
No, not
so
at
maybe they
all.
went out of fashion.
I didn't. I'm surprised that you can get a viable cross from two such widely not related game birds. Good Lord.
Yeah, I came across another cherkey story a couple of years ago from somewhere in the Manchester area. So that one was not an isolated case, but obviously they've completely gone out of fashion because nobody talks about cherkeys these days.
Now, a lady called Karen, who used to be my podiatrist,
Yeah,
told me how she keeps rescued chickens, and she had a rescued turkey cock.
yeah,
And the turkey cock became the sort of protector of the chicken. The female chickens all hid around him, using him as the big protector of the flock.
right.
I didn't know that they breed. That's really interesting.
It is a strange story.
It's an extraordinarily strange story. I'm
I think
really
it's worth.
impressed, Richard, that you come up with all these incredible stories.
Thanks, John. And those are all the stories I have for you.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's great to have you on the show again, Richard. Thank you for coming along. I'm going to find pictures to go with all those stories, and it will be
Brilliant.
up on one of the Saturday shows very soon.
I look forward to watching it.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says, don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
If you've been affected by any of the topics in today's episode, you can just bugger off, because we don't give a monkeys. Bloody well get a grip. Sort your own bloody problems out rather than ringing up somewhere.
That was a public information film.
And that's about it for this episode. Richard Muirhead certainly has what Charlie Falk would have described as a wild talent for discovering all this stuff. He comes up with more strange stories and more completely absurd things that turn out to be true than anybody else I've ever met. I want to say a big thank you to Richard for being on the show this week and last week. It's been a joy to have him, and yes, boys and girls, we'll have him back on as soon as I can get away with it. I also want to say a big thank you to my producer Louis, who is still gallivanting about the southern states of America, but now has gainful employment for a very well-known company. Well done, dear man. But he'll continue to be the producer of this show for as long as he wants to be the producer of this show, which I hope will be a long time, because I really couldn't do it without him. And I want to say a big thank you to Graham, who is the Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology and also my carer, which means that as well as CFZ stuff, he deals with things like having to take me to the hospital and push my wheelchair around, which happens about twice a week at the moment, and all the other things that have to be done. At the moment, he's helping me deal with a whole minefield of legal shit that has to be dealt with. I want to say a big, big thank you to Miss Gwyn Palmer, the Assistant Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and the lady upon whom I have decided to entrust my ridiculous empire when I finally hang up my hat. This is the hat I'm going to hang up, but I'm not hanging it up just yet. But she is going to take over the reins of this completely weird circus when I finally decide I can't or don't want to do it anymore. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. What am I doing on Wednesday? Well, I think that we're going to be looking at the contents of the new issue of Animals and Men. But I haven't filmed it yet, so I can't actually confirm that. But that's what I think we're going to be doing. And I'll be back on Saturday with the first of 2 parts in which we talk to another old friend of mine, a guy called Chester Moore Jr., whom I haven't seen in well over 20 years, and who is the person who rediscovered the red wolf in Texas, amongst all sorts of other exciting adventures. So, really, it remains for me to ask, Mr. McCrinnan, are you there watching? Are you, Mr. McCrinnan? Because if you're going to be watching the show on Saturday, Mr. McCrinnan, I'm going to be there, doing all the stuff I always do on Saturdays, the live chat, the notifications, the burbling around on social media, trying to drum up interest, and all the other gubbins that I usually do before watching the show, chatting happily to those who are there to watch it with me, and then going to sleep for the rest of the afternoon, which is my basically my Saturday afternoon pattern these days, pattern of behaviour. But assuming that you're going to be there watching it, Mr. McCrimmon, and I'm there doing my gubbins, I'm most certainly going to be seeing you. Bingo